we have the honor to be the first ones today.
Woohoo!
So really happy with that. My name is Daniel Laskewitz, and I am a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. And with me, I have Albert-Jan.
Albert-Jan, everyone calls me Appie, so please, Daniel, call me Appie today.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about Copilot Studio, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the developer experience. So normally when you look at Copilot Studio, it's more of a low-code tool that you can use to build agents. We will try to do as much on the developer side as we can. So we will talk a little bit about that today.
Mic problems?
Mic problems.
Ooh.
Is it working? Let me, I didn't touch it. Working now?
Ooh.
Oh, it's working.
Magic hands.
Oh. I will stay here for the rest of the presentation now. No. Okay. So, to give you a little bit of an introduction on Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is a low-code tool that you can use to build agents. And it's part of the Power Platform. The Power Platform is the low-code platform within Microsoft. And we have a bunch of products that you can see on the outer line, basically. So you have Power BI for analytics, you have Power Apps for application building, you have Power Automate for automation, we have Copilot Studio for agents, and Power Pages for websites. Under that, we have a bunch of supporting services. One that we are going to talk about today is the connector part, which is basically a way to connect between the Power Platform and backend services. And that's really interesting when you talk about Copilot Studio, because of course, when you have an agent in Copilot Studio, you want to connect to backend sources. So you want to maybe get some inventory data from SAP, for instance, or you want to get your CRM data from Dynamics or maybe Salesforce. There's tons of possibilities there. So when we talk about Microsoft Copilot Studio, it's very good at two things. One is building your own agents. So that's your heavily customized agent that you can create, or you can extend Microsoft 365 Copilot. And extending Microsoft 365 Copilot is, for instance, really interesting, again, when you want to add some knowledge to Microsoft 365 Copilot, because it normally only talks to the graph data, so that is the Microsoft 365 data about emails, about appointments, meetings that you have, about a whole bunch of things. But with Copilot Studio, you can extend it and also add other sources to that as well. When we create our own agents, we have a life cycle that we go through. And we start basically at the beginning with creating an agent. So what you can do there is you can start building it with, for instance, natural language. So you can just describe what you want, and it will create an agent for you. It will ask you a bunch of questions. So maybe you want to have a public website in there that you want to search through, make that available there. Or you want to maybe add a SharePoint site. You can do that all in the natural language experience in the beginning. Next, you can also add triggers nowadays. So it can trigger and make it an autonomous agent. So for instance, when you receive an email, it can start that agent, for instance, if you want to. Or maybe you want to start the agent every morning at 9 a.m. or something like that. There's all kinds of triggers that you can add as well. You can add knowledge. So you can add your own files if you want to. You can add websites. You can add SharePoint sites. And you can then chat over that knowledge if you want to. You can create specific topics. So sometimes you really want to design the whole conversation. So you don't want to have AI generate the answer on knowledge, for instance, but you want to kind of ask a question, then get the answer and do something with that answer and have it a little bit more structured. That's where topics come into play. And then after that, you can also add actions. Actions are the thing that I just called connectors. So you can add an action if you want to, for instance, get data from SAP, for instance, or if you want to send an email. There are tons of possibilities there in the actions as well. And when you are almost ready with your agent, you can start thinking about where do I want to publish this agent. So there you have channels. And that's where you can, for instance, add it to Teams, or you can add it to your website or your own application that you have your app. There's tons of possibilities there where you can then publish the agent. You can also add it to Slack if you want to Facebook. There are tons of possibilities there. And then after that, you have a monitor and improve step where you can look at the analytics and see how people are liking your agent. So we have a lot of built-in kind of ratings on the CSAT score, so customer satisfaction score, where people can rate their conversation with that agent. And you can look at the data, for instance, so you can see in a certain topic or maybe with a certain action, they are getting a really bad rating. So maybe I want to improve on that. Or maybe they are asking a whole bunch of questions that you don't have any answer to. Then maybe you want to improve that as well. And lastly, you can add all kinds of services to the agent as well. So if you want to add some Azure services like Azure AI Search, or maybe you want to have application insights in there, you can do that as well in the services part. And you have tons of possibilities to build your agent. So what you can do is you can use the pre-built agents. Those are already available out of the box. So what you can do there is you can just click on an agent, an FAQ agent, for instance, and it will guide you through what you can add to that agent, and it will automatically have a bunch of topics already in there, etc. So you can get started really quickly. I use those a lot to kind of get familiar with how Copilot Studio works, because a lot of those, they aren't like the agents that are fully ready to go, basically. You still have to configure some things, but they have some patterns in there that are really useful, and you can kind of snoop around how they created that. So that's something that you can do with those pre-built agents. Then you have the natural language part. That's where you can kind of use the Copilot Studio agent to chat about your agent. So you can basically describe what you want, you can answer a bunch of questions, and it will generate all the stuff it needs to generate for the agent. Then we have the visual canvas. That's more of the experience that you have when you build those custom topics. And there you can have like an experience where you can add notes and all kinds of stuff to the visual canvas. And lastly, we also have a code view. So everything you do in Copilot Studio, and you configure that through all the wizards and that kind of stuff, it's all generating YAML code in the backend. So you can switch to code view, and then you can also copy and paste the YAML, etc. That's all there. But with that, let's go to Appie. And
if you click next, it will start playing a movie. So if you want to play around with the code view, we picked a team navigator. It's an out-of-the-box demo. You can configure it, you can use it. But as soon as you create an agent using that, you will see that it automatically creates a bunch of topics for us. So we get a bunch of topics that you can look through, see some of the design patterns that there are. You can see that if I go to a specific topic, that there are actions configured. And like you can see, it's basic out of the box, you get it, and it's a really fun way to get started. Now imagine that you have this agent and you say, I want to see how this code view looks. What you can do is you can use the UI and go to the code view, or you can configure, set up the actual Git integration. What you can do is you can go to a solution, and you see here that I have my agent demo solution. If I go to see what is in my solution, I see that I have an agent, I have some agent components, a connection reference in there. So everything I saw in the UI is in that solution. And what I can do is for that solution, I can connect it to a DevOps repository or a DevOps team project. So I picked my organization, picked a project, picked a repository, put a source as a Git folder, and as soon as you say next, it will actually set up that connection for me. So what happens, and it takes a second to load, but it will automatically set up a connection to my Azure DevOps repo. And in that Azure DevOps repo, once it is connected, every change I do from the UI will end up there. So here you can see it now says, successfully connected to Git. I can go to my repository, and I can see, well, currently there is nothing in there yet because I haven't committed anything. But as soon as I go back and I press F5, you will see that there are a bunch of changes. So 29 changes picked up from the UI. And then as soon as I say, OK, let's commit those changes to my DevOps repo, I can see in Azure DevOps what actually is being added. So as you can see, normally, as with Git, it takes a few seconds to actually commit everything. But once it is committed, I can go and switch back to my Azure DevOps repo, and I can see all the YAML components that are in there. So let's have a look. Let's go to refresh. And here you see I have my bot YAML, which is the configuration, contains a base 64 image that is being used as the icon. If you scroll down, you see some of the configuration, like the display name, provisioning status, bot registration details. But also, if I go to my bot components, you see the bot component YAML, which is a topic with some configuration, and a data object. And those two things together are topics. Now, the cool thing is that I can change it in my DevOps repo. So I can have multiple people work on that in my DevOps repo and then resync it to the interface, because I can both work in Copilot Studio as well as Azure DevOps. So this is a really cool way to have sort of a code view or code experience for working with Copilot Studio. And then we can go next. Now, once you have that code view set up, probably the next thing you want to do is make sure that you can add your own knowledge. And topics are a great way to kind of structure the way that your agent is working. And I can say I have a topic for hello, I have a topic for goodbye, I have a topic for specific scenarios. But in most cases, we want AI to come up with answers for us, rather than us having to type out every topic, every response. So what you can do is you can add knowledge. And if you add knowledge, you add a connection to a specific knowledge source. And you see here that we have public websites, we have SharePoint, we have Dataverse. So what I can do is I can connect to those data sources and then have that AI agent reason over that data and try to provide me with an answer. And that means that if you configure that if you ask a question and it is available in your SharePoint site, or if it's in your OneDrive, or it is in Dataverse, it will actually try to craft an answer based on that data. It will use generative AI, so it will rewrite the answer slightly so that it matches your question, matches your tone of voice, but it reuses the data that is already in there. Even better, it uses your data structure and security permissions. So if you have SharePoint and you don't have access to SharePoint, the agent will try to connect to it. It will say, oh, sorry, you don't have access. You won't see anything from that. So really, really useful to add knowledge. Next thing, well, once you have knowledge, you might want to play around with the logic. You can say, I want to have knowledge and have every answer questioned, or every question answered by that specific knowledge. So I can add SharePoint, I can add Dataverse. You might want to add your own logic. And your own logic can be with conditions. You can add your own logics with specific actions or specific flows. And you can try and pick and match different things. One of the samples that we see happening a lot is that we add SharePoint data, and we can ask questions about that SharePoint data. But you might also want to have a bunch of frequently asked questions where you say, I want to have a bit more structure in my answer. Let's say you have an HR site with your HR data, and you want to ask a question, how many days personal time off do I have left? Now, the general answer is you have 26 days a year. That's coming from our HR system, but you might want to call a specific action to look up for you or for me how many days off you still have in some backend system. So that's where you can add your own logic, and you can play around with more static information or more generative actions that you can combine into a single flow or a single dialogue. And then we go to the next one. Because once you want to retrieve that personal time off for me or for you, what you're going to do is you're going to add actions. And actions are basically connections to backend systems. And you see there are a bunch of samples out there. You can look at Excel files. You can look at SharePoint. There are over 1,400 pre-built connectors that you can use to connect to different data sources. But even better, you can write your own custom connectors. And for any backend system that you might have, you can build a custom connector. For any API that you might run, you can build your own custom connector. And if you describe that custom connector, if you give it a good description, it can actually be triggered from your process. And I do believe we have a demo for that as well. So let's go. There we go. And again, we recorded it. So what I did is I pulled a C# to-do demo API because I was lazy. It's just the out-of-the-box to-do API. And the cool thing is, if you have it in the Visual Studio, what you can do is you can publish it as a custom connector directly. You can connect to your Power Platform. You can describe your custom connector. And all you have to do is configure a dev tunnel. If you do that, it will automatically publish for you that custom connector. So I don't have to worry about anything. It will all be done for me. So as you can see, I go through the wizard, fill in 5 fields, then click on Finish. And what it will do is it will automatically create a new custom connector for me based on the API spec that is available for me. And with that API spec, I will automatically be able to use that running on my local machine. So if I do add action, and if I search for my to-do connector, you will see that that is available, and that, I call it event to-do, so that to-do connector is available, but it's also automatically connected to my local running machine through a dev tunnel. So all of a sudden, I can start playing around with generative AI connected to an API running on my local machine. And important here is that if I add a new connector, if I configure that custom action, what I'll need to do is I'll need to give it a proper description. So rather than just saying get to do items, I will describe slightly what is being done there. Why? Well, generative AI will use the description to figure out when it needs to trigger this specific action. So if you just say get to do items, it might pick it up, but if you give it a bit better description, like, okay, we're doing to-do items, tasks, other work-related items, it will be better able to figure out when this action needs to trigger. So I can add it, I can change the user authentication. If I say, like, I don't want user authentication, I could even get authentication from the person creating this action, configuring this action, sort of like a service account, but I want to stay with user authentication. And if I click on next, it will create that for me. I can also go back, change some of the other settings, but let's create it first. And what happens is that it will create this specific connector. It will connect to that connector, and it will create the action for me. And as you can see here, I now have an action, my event to do items, get to do items, and we can click next again, and it will move on. So what I can then do is I can ask it a question, and I can ask something like, hey, can you retrieve my to-do items? And as soon as I click next, you see that it is trying to look up the connection. It sees, hey, I have a custom action called retrieve to do item, so I know what to do. And then it will say, oh, but wait a minute, you have permissions required, which is because we said user authentication. So I'm saying, okay, let's connect because I want to do that. And as soon as I click connect, then I can refresh, and there we go again. And then it should say, okay, well, now I can do it. 1, 2, 3. And interesting enough, what you will see is, okay, there we go. And then it says your to-do items are successfully retrieved. All good. But I don't see any to-do items. Why does that happen? Well, it's actually slightly logical from an AI perspective. The API is returning an empty array. So the API says I have a 200 success, there are 0 to-do items, and your generative AI thinks, oh, everything went well. I went for a set of to-do items. I got back an empty array with a success message, so I'm good. Here are your to-do items. There are no to-do items, so I'm not going to throw you an error because I got that 200 success message. So you'll see here that if you are building stuff with generative AI, you have to think about that and maybe give some instructions to generative AI to say something like, if there are no to-do items, or if you retrieve an empty array, please tell the user that there are no to-do items, rather than saying, sure, I've retrieved everything for you. Because as a user, I now would be like, okay, what do you expect from me? So adding a custom connector is pretty straightforward, and you can use that to call any API that you like. And then we can go to the next one, because, well, custom connectors kind of feel a bit old school, and rumor has it that we have another demo with even more cool stuff.
Yes, so I don't know how many of you already heard of MCP. The whole room,
Everyone.
probably. Okay, so MCP is a new protocol that has been around since, I think, November. Anthropic, the guys and girls behind the cloud service, they created this protocol. And we see it being adopted more and more in different services. OpenAI supports it with ChatGPT. Azure AI Foundry supports it, but also Copilot Studio supports it now. And what it is basically you can create an MCP server, Model Context Protocol. It's short for that. And you can create a server for that. You can add a whole bunch of tools in that server. And then it's heavily optimized for AI, basically. And you can just connect to that server, and it will, when you send a message to it, it will figure out which tool to talk to. And it will get a response from that tool, for instance. So what you can do there is, for instance, calculations. You can do that. You can talk to other services. So if you want to kind of build a connector with multiple tools to maybe get data from SAP or send some data to SAP or do some other stuff, you can do that as well. And as you can see here, Copilot Studio will provide some standard MCP clients, or MCP service, sorry. So you will probably see in the future a Microsoft 365 MCP server in there, and that will give you the option to talk to all kinds of Microsoft 365 data if you want to. But you can also create your own custom MCP server if you want to. So with that, I have created a demo. So let me switch to that one. And there we go. So what I created here is a really simple MCP server. And I wanted to do something fun. So what I created is a jokes MCP server. And what it does, it has a couple of tools there. It can get a Chuck Norris joke. It can get a dad joke. And it can get Chuck Norris categories, because you can also filter those jokes on a certain category, for instance. It has a bit of code for all those tools. So what you can see here is the server.tool, and it will get some random joke from api.chucknorris.io. And we have a couple more tools in there. I'm not going through it in all detail, but I'll share the code later as well. And when we switch to Copilot Studio, what we have here is the way to go to an action. And I already added an action, and that's the jokes MCP server. And I hope it loads. What you do here is you can easily add that basically as a connector, just like Appie told us. You can also create a connector for it, and then you can add it as an action to Copilot Studio. And here you again kind of describe what you can do with this MCP server. And then when I will test my agent, I can, if it works, get a joke. And then it should start requesting a joke.
Drum roll.
And there we go. And you can see on the right side that it got 2 jokes even, because it noticed that there are 2 different tools in that MCP server. And it's using a Chuck Norris joke. And it also gives a dad joke out in one go. So it can also combine multiple tools in one. So it runs the tools both, and it combines the answer in one answer. So that's really cool about this as well. This was kind of my first tryout with an MCP server, and it's a pretty simple scenario. But I wanted to show you that you can use basically every API. You can just call that from those tools, and then you can add those to Copilot Studio. So here we go. I also talked a little bit about analytics in the beginning of the presentation. We have a lot of analytics available, so you can kind of see how your agent is performing. You can see if it got good ratings or not, etc. You can see a lot of those insights, and they're really helpful to kind of guide you through whatever you can improve on your agent. And I think this one is about the application insights part.
Yep.
So you can also add application insights to your Copilot Studio agent. And then what you can do is you can query the application insights data that will get sent to application insights from Copilot Studio. So you can just add the connection string in there, and you can change some settings there to make sure that it will send it to the application insights part. And when you then ask a question, for instance, and you go through the experience, it will send it to application insights, and then you can start querying the logs here. And then you can go through the experience here, and you can use some KQL to figure out what happened in your agent.
See, someone asked a question to our agent.
So yeah, that's what you can do there. There's also an option to add Azure AI Search. Yeah, and they have a new version, but it's still in preview, so we're still working on it. The old version is working, I believe, but
definitely
the modern one still needs a little bit of work. We're still working on that, but that will make it possible for you to just use the indexes that you already have in Azure AI Search and reuse them inside of Copilot Studio. So you don't have to create it in multiple places. You can just add it to multiple agents if you want to. And lastly, yeah, if you are looking at Copilot Studio, we have a lot of integrations with Azure, and it's really a better together story. So we have a whole lot of different Azure experiences within Copilot Studio. So when you are thinking about creating an agent, don't only think about Azure AI Foundry, think about them both, because they all have their strengths and their weaknesses. So make sure to kind of figure out if some scenarios are better for you with Copilot Studio and some scenarios are better for you with Azure AI Foundry. So try to at least look at them both. That's kind of the parting thought I have here. And with that, thanks a lot for your attention, and yeah, feel free to reach out to us with some questions. We are now done with the session, so if you have some questions, we'll wait around here, and we will handle those as well. And for the rest of the day, have a lot of fun.